So my name is Vikas Chinnan. I am currently 47 years old. I live in California. Um, Regarding my diagnosis story and my background, the first thing of note is that I had a viral infection of my spinal cord. It was diagnosed as transverse myelitis back when I was in 7th grade, around 12 or 13 years of age. And so it's relevant because as I got older, I got closer to my diagnosis. My assumption was that the asymmetry of gait, which I had as a result of the transverse myelitis, was the primary cause of the symptoms that I was experiencing, which was more stiffness and prolonged stiffness in my right side. So when I went to my neurologist, I told them myself, I said, I think, after 35 years of walking asymmetrically, I'm dealing with back issues and stiffness and pain. The reason it's important is because this led them to investigate primarily spinal cord related issues like multiple sclerosis and other things, and caused a delay in my diagnosis. And so it was nothing I could do about it in retrospect, but a learning opportunity for me. um, you know uh, Given the symptoms and my age, they didn't immediately assume Parkinson's, and that was in 2018, leading up to August of 2018. And then that was leading up to August of 2021. In August of 2021, after 2 years of searching for a diagnosis and trying to figure out what I was dealing with, physical therapy, muscle relaxants, number of MRIs, scans, x-rays, etc., I ended up getting a tremor in my right side, in my right hand. I have a neurologist in the family who had been following my progress and was concerned. When I got the tremor, he said, you really might want to go back to your neurologist and ask them if they can recommend a DAT scan for you. At which time I went to my neurologist in August of 21 and said, what do you think about getting a DAT scan? My family member who's a neurologist suggested that I discuss this with you. And she was very open to it. My neurologist, fortunately, was not, didn't have any issue with that. She said, it's a really good point. The tremor and all the symptoms that you've had to date with your back and your stiffness suggest something like Parkinson's, and why don't we get a DAT scan? And that was in January of 22, January 27th, 26th or 27th. Then February 5th of 2022, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at age 45, which put me in the young onset category. Onset of symptoms was a minimum, I would say, of 3 years, leading up to diagnosis. So it was a tough 3-year period. Specific to that, and we may get into this later, but the real killer for me was, beyond the stiffness, was the uncertainty and the unknowing, the not knowing what I was dealing with. I got to the point by the time I was diagnosed where I said to my wife, maybe I have cancer, maybe I have something else terminal, whatever it is, I just want to know. Good, bad, or otherwise, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I can't go on living like this with this uncertainty of what's going on in my body. And that points to also the cognitive side of things, right? So I think one of the biggest challenges that I was dealing with was what I now look back as a form of depression. I've since learned the term anhedonia, and more of an apathy than a depression. So it wasn't it was clinically diagnosed as depression, but it wasn't the suicidal feeling, lack of self-worth, didn't want to live type of depression. It was more of the didn't find any enjoyment in the type of activities I previously found enjoyment in type of depression, right? So very shocking to me and my wife that I had no interest in social engagement, which was, a big part of my life. On the weekends, always going out with friends and doing things. And I just had zero interest in that. And that was really disconcerting to me and hard for me to understand myself. And then I would say I recognized some level of cognitive decline where I was being less articulate in work meetings than I had been prior, and otherwise in conversations where, the example that I regularly encountered was going to new doctors and explaining my history and what I was experiencing. And I found that before I was medicated and using Parkinson's meds, it got harder and harder to recount my medical history to the next person. I would spend 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour recounting what I could now just tell you in a matter of 10 minutes. It took me 30, 40, maybe even 60 minutes to go through that whole story. Most surprising thing was the cognitive and the anhedonia, right? I mean, that was the most foreign to me. The stiffness and the physical pieces, I had experienced something like that prior in my life, unrelated. I mean, we say unrelated, don't know for sure, but all things point to unrelated to the Parkinson's disease. I had experienced physical challenges, gait asymmetry, shuffling gait, stiffness, weakness, et cetera, et cetera. The tremors was new for me, but the most unsettling or unfamiliar was the anhedonia, the apathy, and the cognitive decline. That was, or the cognitive impairment. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I would say most of it comes after, right? Prior to diagnosis, I was just seeking answers, right? So without any kind of direction, I would say coping was continuing to stay on top of it and keep chasing answers so that I always had something else that I was looking for, whether it was relief from physical therapy or relief from cortisone shot to the back or relief from muscle relaxants. While none of them worked, that was the only way I could cope leading up to diagnosis, was to keep searching and have some hope that the next thing, that there was always something out there that I was looking at that might be the answer. And it sounds cliche, but not giving up, right? So, I guess, once you give up, then you're no longer coping. You're just accepting your fate, right? Post-diagnosis, I would say the biggest thing that I have learned and taught myself, and this is just a psychological trick, is to tell myself that instead of saying I have good days and bad days, which is a very common phrase, and nothing wrong with that phrase at all. People have good days and bad days. But I always say I have good days and I have better days, right? So I'm living, I'm walking, I'm breathing, my family's healthy. I have my cognitive, impairment has declined, is not no longer there. So I'm going to say there's no such thing as a bad day. It's good days and better days. And so for whatever, everyone has their own tricks. That's a trick for me to choose to look at things that way. The other, call it a trick or a coping mechanism, has been to get involved with the Parkinson's community. I'll preface it by saying there's two things. One is literally from day 3 of being diagnosed, I started boxing and interacting with people with Parkinson's just because I needed something to focus on. And what I learned is very quickly is I am, in the spectrum of people with Parkinson's, a very fortunate individual, right? I couldn't ignore the fact that I had good medical resources, good family support, good spousal support, good children support, sport support in general, family and friends, 40 or 50 doctors in my family, all people that I could rely on to help me understand what I was hearing from my doctors. And so all those things put me in a very kind of fortunate situation. So while it's strange to use the word lucky and progressive neurological disease in the same sentence, I consider myself one of the lucky ones. Now that I'm 2 years in, I have really come to realize is, you often hear people say that I am, I'm in a club that I did not want to be a part of, right? While that's true, and I wouldn't challenge that, it's not a club I want to be a part of. It's not a club that I'm excited to be a part of, but it is a club that I'm proud to be a part of. And I say that very sincerely, in that what I have learned over 2 years is that living in a body where you have the highs and lows of a Parkinson's patient, where the on and off period, so in the same day, you can experience a situation where you're walking normally, talking normally, feeling normally, and by all objective measures, someone would look at you and say, I don't see anything wrong with you. I don't see that you're suffering in any way. And then in the same 24-hour period, you can experience a situation where you ask your family or friends for help getting a glass of water from the tap. To live in that body is a very strange existence, and there's times when I wonder if somebody else who doesn't know Parkinson's, like I didn't know Parkinson's before, would look at you and say, "You're faking it. You're faking your disability when you're asking for help," because they're like, just yesterday I saw you carrying boxes, walking up and down the steps without a cane. How is it possible that you're dealing with this much pain or physical this extreme version of physical symptoms? Or, for example, to call an employer or a friend and say, I'm canceling dinner plans, or I can't attend this meeting because I'm having an off day, and they just can't relate, right? They're saying, like, how is it possible that you didn't know 40 minutes ago or an hour ago that you were going to have to cancel, and then all of a sudden you're saying, I literally can't get out of bed right now. So all that to say that, tie that back to the feeling proud, is what I have learned about this disease is that it gives you a perspective and a way to traverse through life, recognizing that every person you interact with is fighting some battle that you don't know anything about, or believing that that's a possibility. And so I think it has given me the privilege, the opportunity to traverse life in such a way that the person I meet on the street, I give them benefit of the doubt, and I give them some space, and allow them to be who they are, recognizing that they may be fighting some battle that I'm not aware of, or is not visible to me. And I think that is a perspective that is, for me, unique to my diagnosis and unique to my existence as a person with Parkinson's. And I find that fellow people with Parkinson's have the same perspective that I do, at a higher level than the average population. It's created a level of empathy in me for other people without knowing what it is. Like, I think the difference is, without Parkinson's, you can be empathetic, but you have to have some reason to be empathetic. With Parkinson's, you say, I'm going to extend that empathy to someone who I don't know and know nothing about, just trusting that they may be dealing with something. Usually, for me specifically, the example of an off time is, like, I spend a lot of time at my computer. I'm doing work. I'm doing Parkinson's work or whatever. And when I need to stand up and move is when I realize, yep, it's off. For me specifically, that everything is stiff, right? It's actually, and unfortunately, in my case, I spend more time off than on. Right now, I'm still, kind of working on my meds and trying to figure out the right combination, right prescriptions. I just mentally brace for that stiffness. If I don't have it, it's like, oh, this is great. I feel good. I got up and I'm not so stiff. But normally speaking, it just that's the way it is. It's like when I go from a seated to a standing position, and I need to stretch for a few seconds before I take my first step, then I know I'm trending towards off. There's a few things that I'm involved in. There's a lot of great foundations and a lot of great work going on in the Parkinson's community. It just so happened that one of the first classes that I attended, fitness classes I attended, somebody from the Parkinson's Foundation came and spoke, and they promoted Moving Day and the Revolution, the two major fundraisers for the Parkinson's Foundation. And I happened to be looking at that time for a way to announce to my friends and family around the world that I had Parkinson's disease. And it just thought, what a better way than to say, I'm going to, fight at the same time, and I'm going to raise funds and awareness about the disease while I'm letting people know that I have this disease, right? And so as a result, I just kind of fell in with the foundation, and I never looked back. And it resonated with me, right? So if you look at Michael J. Fox, fantastic organization, big budget, a lot of heavy hitting donors. Generally speaking, I think the people look at that organization and say that 80-20, maybe 80% of their funds go towards research, looking for ways to find a cure or early detection, which is great that that's going on. But it's been years since Parkinson's was discovered, and there hasn't been a cure yet. What that means is that there may or may not be a cure in the next 10, 15, 20 years or in my lifetime. And in the absence of that, my goal is to live well with Parkinson's. And so the Parkinson's Foundation mission of helping people live well with Parkinson's in the absence of a cure, so more like 80-20 the other way, 80% living well and 20% research, resonated with me. And then I started meeting all these, as you described, kind people, both staff of the foundation and people with Parkinson's through the organization, and got more and more deeply involved. And so now I serve as vice chair of the People with Parkinson's Advisory Council. So it's a 50-50 member board of people with Parkinson's or care partners that advise the foundation on programming and messaging and various programs that they employ. We do things like review grant applications for the Parkinson's Foundation, recruit for the council itself, work on we pick pet projects. Like I did a media tour for Parkinson's Awareness Month last year. We have people that are helping with general neurology outreach to increase the knowledge about Parkinson's amongst general neurologists, because there's a shortage of movement disorder specialists around the world. Pushing genetic testing, so through PD generation and other forms, pushing genetic testing to increase the understanding of the genetic determinants of Parkinson's disease. Those are just a few examples, and I find all that very, very helpful. And I will be serving as a chair starting in July for the next 12 months, starting in July. And my goal during that term will be, first and foremost, to increase the genetic testing. I think that's what I'm leaning towards, is really focusing on expanding the genetic testing and the access to that testing beyond the United States, so globally. And I'm looking forward to moving the needle in that front. On a personal level, the biggest goal I have is to improve the connectivity of individuals around the world with their local Parkinson's resources. So in my estimation, there is an amazing lack of awareness, publicity around local resources for Parkinson's disease. I find is that there are a lot of resources out there, but simply Google it. My way of finding anything is to Google it, right? And if you Google local Parkinson's resources or Parkinson's resource near me, the likelihood that you find the 20 or 30 programs that you have access to is very slim. It takes too long. It's the first thing you might do when you get diagnosed, and it should be the easiest thing to do is simply say, what are my local resources? And it's not there. At least I have found that it's difficult to find and find up-to-date, accurate information regarding contact and location and timings of those resources. And so to that end, I am embarking on an ambitious project. At the end of March, I intend to launch parkyresource.org. And my goal with Parky Resource is basically to be the Yelp or the Zillow of the Parkinson's resource world, right? Go to place first and foremost to find non-medical resources. So I don't think I can really move the needle on helping people find doctors per se. Maybe we can. Maybe we look at that later. But I think people have doctors, right? They have access to medical professionals. What happens is the medical professionals tell those people, go get some exercise, find programs, find support groups, et cetera, and they don't hand them necessarily a list of them. They leave it to the patient to go find that information. And so I want to be the conduit to the patients to help them find that information. Okay, there's a few different things. The biggest life shift in terms of self-care was choosing not to work anymore. And I say choosing, that goes back to the statement I made earlier about being lucky. Yeah. Not everyone can decide not to work. And I recognize that, and I don't make try to, I'm careful not to make it sound as easy as just, hey, just stop working. I have a supportive spouse with a good job, a supportive family, good healthcare. I had that option for my wife to look at the situation and say, listen, I want you to be your best physically and mentally so that you can be here for our family. And to that end, work only if it suits your well-being. And if not, then focus on your well-being. So that was the biggest change for me. Beyond that, daily exercise is part of my self-care. I know that I feel better when I get my heart rate up. Focusing on diet, exercise, both. Pursuing my passion, which is now helping people with Parkinson's. And then on a very kind of personal level, allowing myself some grace to go through the ups and downs that come with the disease, right? So what that looks like at this very moment is one day a week, not the same day every week, but just one day a week, allowing myself to shut down my computer, shut down my to-do list, shut down everything, and sleep, right? I never know when it's going to hit, but if I allow myself to do that, it allows me to bounce back and be productive, for another week. But it's something that I have to allow myself to do. And I have to allow myself to say, if it comes to that, disappoint others, right? Like, cancel appointments, cancel gatherings, cancel meeting with friends, cancel anything that I had planned. And most people understand, but it means creating that awareness in yourself and in others that this is what you're dealing with, and being able to say if that's what it is. You may feel like you're letting someone down, but it's most important that you take care of yourself and return full strength. And the way to do that is to give yourself some rest. One thing I'll add to that is, for someone who chooses to or is able to continue working, it's a unique position to be in, because not many jobs would afford that flexibility. So in a perfect world, having an open conversation with your employer about your condition would allow you to go to them and say, listen, I know it'd be nice if I appreciate the flexibility to work from home from time to time. It's great. But for the next 24 hours, if I just rest without thinking about work, I'll come back stronger in 24 hours than if I check my email every 2 hours, even if I'm working from home, if I'm, resting here and there, if I take everything off my mind and just focus on, getting as much physical and mental rest as I can, then I will return stronger. And I think I have that flexibility to do that because I have, help around the house, or family nearby, and a supportive spouse. But not everyone is able to do that. And so the more that people can carve that space out for themselves, assuming that they deal with the same thing I do, the better. Let's see, what are the pillars of living well with Parkinson's? Come down to sleep regimen, adherence to your medicine, your prescribed timing and doses of medicine, exercise, social interaction, and diet, right? I mean, I think those are the 5 things that I would say I would tell people to focus on first and foremost. Then I would encourage them to give the community a shot, right? And I say that what I mean by that is, staring Parkinson's in the face day in, day out isn't for everyone. So going to boxing classes with people who are 20 or 30 years older than you, looking at people who are further progressed in the disease is not for everyone. At the same time, if you give it a shot, I think you'll find some people that are inspirational, fighting hard, and give you hope. And what we described as the nice, empathetic people, you'll find a community of people who wish you well and will be there for you and will make you stronger. right? And so I think, I think there's a couple of different paths. I didn't have a choice. It didn't seem like a choice to me that I could, because I've certainly met people that go down the path of, I can't stare this in the face every day. I'm just going to fight solo. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to take care of myself, go to my doc and do my regimen. And then there's people who immerse themselves in the community, and there's no right or wrong path. Choose choose a path that works for you, but give the path of immersing yourself in the community a shot, because I think it can be very rewarding.